We spoke a moment ago about the lack of humor that has characterized dictators throughout history. That's because real humor is almost always subversive. Humor undermines dictatorial power. It punctures balloons. It knocks people off pedestals. Nothing enraged Adolf Hitler more than Charlie Chaplin's portrayal of him in the movie called The Great Dictator. Chaplin, who was actually born on the same day as Hitler, did a fantastic job of capturing the dictator's every nuance and mannerism. This movie did more to alert the American people to the real nature of the Nazi dictatorship than any book or news report available at the time. Powerful people and the symbols of power that they like to accumulate are rarely humorous, at least intentionally. Think of those old Russian generals with all those rows of ribbons on their uniforms. Whatever else you might want to say about them, it was obvious that those uniforms were supposed to be very serious. A dozen rows of ribbons, a big red star on the hat, all sorts of gold braid hanging everywhere. Hey, this is no laughing matter. What a wonderful irony, then, that humor played an important part in the downfall of the Soviet Union. In the final years of the communist regime, political jokes became a highly developed art form in Russia and in all the countries of Eastern Europe. And the generals didn't get the joke until it was too late. The anti-government jokes that were circulating in the Soviet Union during its final years were an example of a particular kind of humor. They were designed to elicit a very specific response, which we can call the laughter of ridicule. This is really a form of hostility disguised as mirth. It's intended to be very destructive to its target, and at the same time it serves as a kind of survival mechanism for the joke teller and his listener. It allows them to express their anger indirectly. If you're ever in a leadership position and you find that this kind of hostile humor has been directed at you, I strongly suggest that you do one thing immediately. And I'm not going to suggest that you take action to suppress the jokes. Instead, you had better ask yourself what you've been doing to provoke this kind of response among your subordinates. And once you figure it out, I suggest that you change that behavior immediately. Laughter of ridicule is a very bad sign for a leader. It's one kind of humor that should be taken very seriously. There are several other categories of laughter that we should consider as well. Have you ever gone to a comedy movie and noticed that the audience starts laughing even before anything funny happens? A leading comic actor can simply come on the screen and make a bland remark about the weather, and everyone in the audience will start laughing. I've seen this happen many times with people like Robin Williams and Steve Martin. Underlying this kind of laughter is a desire on the part of people to have a shared experience. They want to participate in the experience together. I call this the laughter of community. Another kind of laughter that can be observed at the movies is something I call laughter of recognition. This occurs when someone wants to show that they get the joke. They see how something was intended to be funny, even if less informed people don't see it. This kind of laughter is especially common among younger audiences, and many members of the older generation find themselves frequently missing out on it. Irony is the basis for so much humor today, and by its very nature, irony is intended to exclude a certain percentage of people. The rest of them laugh to show that they've been admitted to the club. They laugh to show they recognize the joke, and therefore deserve to be recognized as members of that select group. That's why I call it laughter of recognition. Polite laughter is yet another category. This is sort of a social non-laughter that one gets when a laughing response is called for but isn't really motivated. We've all had the experience of telling a joke that doesn't really go over too well and elicits only polite laughter. And we've all responded to such jokes with polite laughter of our own. It's just a gesture that keeps the ball rolling, but it's an important one. Nobody likes to be on the receiving end of polite laughter, but it's better than being poked in the eye with a sharp stick, to quote an old joke. The last and most important category of laughter I'll mention might be called real laughter. It's spontaneous, it's happy, it's unpremeditated. It has no hidden agenda. It happens when you see or hear something that's really funny. I'd like to spend a moment talking about this category of real laughter because it's one of the most important aspects of humor. The more real laughter you can bring into your life, the better off you'll be. I've spoken quite a bit about children and the raising of children in this program, and kids are really our best source of knowledge about real laughter. They really put their whole selves into it. We lose that to a large extent as we get older, and I'm not sure that loss can be completely avoided. For example, think about someone, one of your own kids, a neighbor or a niece or nephew that you've watched grow up. Whatever interest this person pursues today, it's likely that he or she was a budding artist in the early years. Crayons, markers, and pads of paper are standard issue in most households with young kids, and those kids draw big, beautiful pictures with all sorts of colors and patterns. At that age, there are no rules about keeping inside the lines and using certain colors for certain objects. Those pictures that grace refrigerators across the country are examples of artistic genius. Then when kids grow to about 5 or 6 years old, their drawings change. They begin drawing stick figures standing next to houses that consist of a triangle on top of a square. Kids this age are still just as proud of their drawings and actually see them as a big advance over the ones they'd done. As babies. And they are more advanced in some ways, but they're also less free. There's a sense of responsibility about them, an effort to put everything in the right place and make everything the right color and the right size. In addition, around the same time as these kids' drawings change, their laughter changes too. It's still delightful, but there's more awareness in it. I guess that's just the way it's got to be. As the British poet William Wordsworth put it, though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass and glory in the flower, we will grieve not, but rather find strength in what remains behind. I'm sure kids have a lot of concerns and worries that seem as big to them as ours do to us, but they really don't have a lot of responsibilities. They really don't have bills that have to be paid by tomorrow, or presentations or phone calls that can make your palms sweat. It's those kinds of responsibilities that suppress real laughter as we get older. And there's simply no avoiding it. But we should try to bring real laughter into our lives as much as we possibly can. It's good for the soul. And there's even been evidence that heartfelt laughter has the ability to benefit physical health. Let me say a few practical things about the role of humor in leadership, particularly in business or management situations. Have you ever noticed how certain jokes seem to suddenly appear in the business community, circulate for a while, and then they gradually disappear? Where do these jokes come from? How do they get started? You'll hear them at the start of meetings or conferences when everybody is trying to get settled down. During the course of 1 week, you can have meetings in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Indianapolis, and Boston, and hear the same joke in every one of those meetings. There's something almost eerie about it. In any case, these business meeting jokes really have some important functions. First, they're sort of a bonding ritual, where everybody shows that they share a sense of humor. And that they like to laugh about the same things. I think that function is pretty obvious. But there's another function of jokes that's more subtle but extremely important. In a way, they're intended to rid the situation of humor. Once the joke has been told, the humor has been encapsulated or compartmentalized within that joke, and it won't be seen again until the meeting is over. That's why it's good to begin a very serious discussion with a joke. After the moment of humor has been experienced through the joke, seriousness can reign for the balance of the meeting. I've seen this phenomenon take place many times. If you handle it correctly then, telling a joke can really reinforce your image as a serious person. Once the joke is out of the way, you can be as intense as you want for as long as you want, because all humor has been compressed into the joke, and now the joke is over and done with. There's an important distinction to be made between the leader who tells jokes and a very different kind of person who I'll call the funny guy. And let me point out very quickly that the funny guy is almost always a guy. I don't believe I've ever come across a woman in business who fills this role. I'm not sure why that's true. In any case, the funny guy is someone who doesn't seem to understand that the role of jokes is to reinforce the seriousness of the rest of the interaction. He doesn't understand that a joke is really a kind of scapegoat that forms the center of a little ceremony for a moment and then is banished once and for all. No, the funny guy is someone who keeps telling jokes, who keeps reintroducing humor into a situation from which everyone else has tried to banish it. I can honestly say that I've never met an effective leader whom I would identify as a funny guy. And it's even worse for the funny guy if he actually is funny. Then he's just a clown, and clowns simply are not given leadership positions in any organization.